Good morning, Coalition of Concerned Republicans. Mike Levine here from downtown Mount Dora. We have a great show, amazing show for you today, and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. And I might have to be changing up my call letters here pretty quick because we have a great honor of having Robin Lumb, who I'm not sure how much of our audience knows Robin, but Robin sat on city council, which is the same as the county commission in Duval County for 20 years, is my understanding, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was 4 years.
Forgive me for that. But Robin is definitely an experienced manager, an experienced public representative, and he's on with us today. I'll go ahead and Chuck, if you wouldn't mind bringing Robin on the screen. And you're welcome to pop on too, Chuck, if you'd like. Of course, the great Chuck Benoit is with us today, always helping us put together our technology and, of course, bringing his insightful political background and evangelistic background to the conversation as to how our faith affects our government. And now, of course, with Robin here. So, Robin, why don't you say hello to the audience, please?
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me on this broadcast. I really appreciate it. We're here to talk about the Florida League of Republican Voters, which is a organization that has been created over the past several months. It's preparing for its first official launch sometime in the next couple of weeks. And our goal is to create a voter-led movement aimed at restoring the Republican Party of Florida and to the voters that it was meant to serve, because the corruption that's overtaken the institutional Republican Party is alarming. And we see this in how the RPOF has put its thumb on the scales in favor of Byron Donalds' candidacy and their refusal to promote debates between all the candidates. And it's just emblematic of how insular the Republican Party of Florida has become, the leadership, and it's no longer looking out for the interest of the forgotten man, the ordinary Republican voter, but it is basically beholden to special interest, lobbyists, and dark money political action committees.
Okay, there you go. So I totally agree with that, except, based on my experience, and I've been involved with the Republican Party of Florida for quite a while, 15 years or more, and I'm telling you that they were never grassroots oriented. They always wanted to select our elected officials, and they've just gotten more and more brazen about it. They're up in your face about it today. They don't even mask what their intentions are. I mean, you can see all over the internet, the Republican Party of Florida and the Republican National Committee as well, basically just outraged that the grassroots will not line up behind what they define as their electable candidates. And that's because their electable candidates have a complete disregard for the citizens of our state and our nation. Chuck, you want to come in and have a comment on that?
Well, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. We talk about republicanism, and I was told by a House rep not too long ago, maybe it's getting close to a year from now, who basically told me that the word Republican means something different in the Republican Party than anywhere else in the universe. His word, universe. And so those of us who live in the universe, I guess we're totally devoid of understanding what Republican means to the Republican Party.
And I'll just add a little icing on the cake of what Chuck just said. And when you get Republican Party of Florida representatives coming to your local Republican executive committees and talking to hardworking, productive grassroots activists and inviting them to quit, and I've been invited many times, Mike, why don't you just leave, right? That's what the Republican Party of Florida says. So when I was a voting member at the Republican Party of Florida, we really struggled to build the tent until Donald Trump came along and built the tent for us. And today, the Republican Party of Florida has so much hubris that they're actually kicking people out. Robin, what do you think about that?
Well, it's something that we know that they have been doing. Yeah, I think most of your viewers are probably familiar with the structure of the Republican Party of Florida at the county level, where there are what they call Republican executive committees, which are supposed to be the governing body of the local Republican Party. But to your previous point about that the RPOF has never been exactly grassroots friendly. I would say that at least at one point it was rules based.
Agreed. Agreed.
In years, I had been a member of the Duval County REC for 20 years and am a former party chair. Um, but the Republican Party of Florida was at one point a rules-based organization, and
Right.
and you could predict what they would do based upon the rules that were in place, and those were the rules of procedure and the county model constitution. But the power and the authority of local RECs has been eviscerated. There have been so many changes to these documents, these rules of procedure and the county model constitution, that there's very little authority or autonomy left to local RECs. And in fact, the RPOF routinely violates its own rules. It changes the rules and then ignores its rules. So I would
Exactly.
say those have been significant changes that have taken place over the past 4 or 5 years, and especially since Evan Power has been chairman of the party.
Exactly. Yes, I agree. So, Robin, over the last couple of years, certainly, you and I have been involved with the Florida Republican Assembly, and we've been involved with the Republican Liberty Caucus, watching closely, what each of those organizations do, serving on their executive boards and things like that. So, why don't you tell the audience why you felt it was necessary to create the Florida League of Republican Voters and how the Florida League of Republican Voters differentiates itself from some of the other organizations in the state, Robin?
Well, we have a very specific agenda, and I'm not so certain that these other groups that you talked about have a very specific agenda to pursue in Tallahassee and regarding public policy. We are an America First organization. We were created using the framework of what's known as national conservatism, which is a movement that basically prioritizes the interest of the United States and the American people above all other considerations. So what we're trying to do with the League of Republican Voters is to create a voter-led movement that's got a specific policy agenda, which you can see under our mission statement on our website.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you very much for that. Chuck, you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, I think we do have your mission statement up here. And I don't know if you want to go over any of these in particular or just make a note of the fact that it's there.
Well, it basically it's summarized in 8 specific areas. Our first and overriding goal is to create a movement of ordinary Republican voters who are engaged in the political process. So we want to make it easy for them to become engaged. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to establish either local chapters or county caucuses around the state of Florida. And it's very simple to set up a county caucus, which would have endorsement authority in local races in those counties. And all you need are 15 paid members. The annual membership fee is only $15. But with 15 paid members in a given county, you can create your own caucus group, and you would be able to do endorsements and operate as a local, basically an autonomous local organization operating as a caucus rather than necessarily a chapter. Or you could set up a chapter if you wanted to do that. So what we're trying to do is create an engaged electorate. We're trying to we want to be able to endorse candidates in state and federal elections, which we plan on doing in this election cycle. We want to address an America First conservative policy agenda. We want to advocate for the reform of Florida's lax campaign finance laws, which are allowing dark money PACs to basically control our Republican primary elections. We want to expose public and political corruption wherever we find it. We think that the corruption in Florida is significant and it needs to be addressed. We want to be able to promote the passage of legislation allowing voters to recall local, state elected officials. We want to ensure that elected officials are held accountable for their voting records. In the Republican Party, we talk an awful lot about accountability, but there's very little effort to hold elected Republican officials accountable when they betray the basic principles they were elected to uphold. And finally, we want to be able to endorse, like I said earlier, actually to endorse candidates running for public office so that they have our endorsement. And hopefully over time, that endorsement will become more and more significant.
That sounds great. You know, Robin, you and I kind of resonated with each other when I was basically introducing to various different grassroots organizations around the state my strategies and tactics for success. So I would just lay out that grassroots organizations can have all of the fundamental principle positions nailed down the way correctly and consistent with our Constitution or however you want to measure it. But without the strategies and tactics and resources to actually get the job done, it's all really for nothing, in my view. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things that you and I have talked about over the last couple of years about how we can actually, again, I would suggest that until we can demonstrate to elected officials that we can, in fact, remove them from office, then we're kind of moot, you know? So why don't you talk a little bit about the strategies and tactics that the Florida League of Republican Voters might possibly implement in order to increase effectiveness over what we're accustomed to with other grassroots organizations, Robin?
Well, the first objective is to build a membership base. So we've got to create a membership base. And then hopefully with those numbers, we'll be able to have some influence in Tallahassee. We do intend to do lobbying. We do intend to engage with the legislature, Republicans of the legislature on the same issues that I alluded to earlier. We want to also be able to use the strength of podcasts to communicate to Republican voters. So we've recently set up a YouTube channel. We don't have any videos posted at this time, but we plan on getting those things ready. And so it's basically an effort to build out an organization that's got some political leverage to influence policy in Tallahassee. We're primarily we're focused on all manners of public policy that concern conservative Republicans, but primarily in Florida, as the Florida League of Republican Voters, we're focused a great deal on what happens in Tallahassee and what happens with the Republican Party of Florida.
Okay, that's great. Chuck, why don't you come on in and make any comments that you have at this point?
Well, right at the top of your message to Florida Republican voters, you have we're living through one of the most radical revolutions in our nation's history. Every aspect of American life and culture is under assault, and the threat of left-wing violence is ever present. Now, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I agree that that we have this incredible assault on the left from the left wing. But what we're talking about today is, quite frankly, an assault from the right. Do you agree?
Would you clarify what do you mean an assault from the right?
Well, I would consider at least the Republican Party of Florida considers itself from the right, but it's attacking us just as virulently, possibly in a different manner than the left is attacking our nation.
Oh, I agree. And if you read further down on that, on the homepage there, you'll see where we specifically reference that the other threat is, in fact, what the institutional Republican Party is doing in Florida. Its chairman is a powerful lobbyist who represents special interests. Even its executive director is a lobbyist in Tallahassee. The chairman of its Rules Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the Republican Party of Florida, controls over 100 political action committees. And at least a dozen of which I would categorize as dark money political action committees. And these are the people that are trying to control every aspect of Republican Party politics in Florida. They want to achieve hegemony when it comes to Republican Party of Florida, Republican Party politics in Florida. They're so extreme that at one point they actually maintained that they own the word Republican, literally, a word that's been in common use that is not subject to trademark. They were claiming that they actually own the word Republican, and that any organization, any independent organization of Republican voters that organizes using the word Republican in its name are in violation of state law, which is a complete misreading of state law, but that doesn't keep them from trying to bully people. They'll even send out notices threatening to sue these organizations simply for using the term Republican in their name. And that's how far they've gone in trying to control every aspect of Republican Party politics. They simply refuse to tolerate the existence of independent Republican organizations that operate outside the control of the RPOF.
There you go. Chuck?
Yes, well, I guess from my perspective, as I've kind of worked in the grassroots community for, I'm guessing maybe now 8 years since I've been down here in this area, I immediately noticed a difference in the Republican Party down here than upstate New York. Upstate New York, we actually had Republicans, and we actually had another party called the Conservative Party, and quite frankly, it was almost exactly the same. They put up the same candidates as the Republicans with a few changes. But what we had the opportunity to do up there was to vote for some of these Republicans on the conservative line as opposed to the Republican line. And that was a way to send a message, if you will, to the Republican Party. Down here, there's no way of doing that. They just keep shutting you down. They just keep silencing you. And the real question that keeps coming up for me personally is, how long do we let the Republicans win if they're unwilling to represent us?
And govern, correct. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Chuck. So again,
I think there's going to be
go
a
ahead,
backlash.
Robin. Oh, there is. It's happening right now. I mean, we're in the middle of the backlash right now. Or you could say the middle, but you could also say the beginning. But again, this is the good news, Robin, as you and I have discussed over many months, that with technology the way it is, I mean, you can see, look at the gubernatorial race right now. I mean, the grassroots is just absolutely rejecting Byron Donalds as their Republican nominee for governor, and they're making, believe me, their voices are loud, and everybody knows it. The Republican Party of Florida is aware of it. The Donalds campaign is aware of it. All of the competing candidates are very aware that the grassroots is not happy with Byron Donalds as our nominee for governor. And of course, the other side, let's just say the establishment Republican side who supports Byron Donalds, just understands that as long as there's so many competing candidates in the race, then the odds are that their candidate, Byron Donalds, who has far greater resources than any of the competition, will get across the finish line. And that's actually working for them. So one of my concerns, as I've expressed to you many times over many months, is that these grassroots organizations have to have strategies and tactics and resources in order to be competitive, because we have to be able to redirect the outcomes of these elections, Robin.
Yeah, exactly. Which again explains why we have launched the Florida League of Republican Voters, which, by the way, you are one of our vice presidents. Let me point that out to the audience. And we have assembled and are in the process of assembling a group of leaders from around the state, from all parts of the state, to serve as our initial board of directors and our officers. So this is going to be a statewide movement. It's going to have to grow over time. But there's never been a better time to push back on the institutional corruption within the Republican Party of Florida. And when I talk about corruption, I'm not talking about law breaking. I'm talking about the kind of strong arm tactics that basically undermine our Republican values. When they claim to own the word Republican and they threaten to sue independent organizations using that term in their names, they're basically violating our First Amendment rights and our right to the freedom of association. It's not. It doesn't get any worse than that.
Well, you know, Robin, it actually does.
Well, maybe it does, but from my
But
perspective,
I'm going to explain it to you right now, okay? But when you commandeer the legislative process and change the law in the state of Florida for your own personal political benefit, that is about as bad as it gets. Okay, this is tyrannical. Can you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And as a matter of fact, by the way, it wasn't this past session, but the session before, there was legislation that had been introduced in the House of Representatives that would have dramatically increased the power of the Republican Party of Florida. It basically would have given them almost the authority to write law. Fortunately, it didn't get a vote on the floor. I don't think it ever got out of committee. But there is that effort to further strengthen the Republican Party of Florida's stranglehold on Republican Party politics. And by the way, let me say one other thing too. We are the Florida League of Republican Voters. We are loyal Republicans, but we're not rah-rah Republicans. We will always support the Republican candidate in the general election. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be happy with the nominees. That doesn't mean that we're going to cheer on the Republican Party no matter what. We will continue to praise the Republican Party of Florida when it deserves it, but we will also focus on trying to right the ship. And ideally, we would be able to get people elected to the state executive committee who are committed to fundamental reform. But that's going to be a steep hill to climb.
So you and Chuck and I would agree that the problem we have is in the primary. Agreed, Robin?
Oh, yeah, everything that the grassroots wants to accomplish has to be done in the primary election. That's where the key decisions are being made. Once the primary is over and we have a Republican nominee going into the general election, then it's a settled matter. But if you want to have influence on the election of conservative Republicans in the state of Florida, you've got to be able to have success in primary elections. And one of the things that there are a lot of people in Florida that haven't been here for that long, but there was a time when after in a Republican primary, there was the initial primary and then a runoff primary between the two leading vote getters. That law changed a number of years ago. So now all you need to win a Republican primary is a plurality of the votes. And that's why someone like Byron Donalds can dominate an election, because all he has to do is score higher in the vote count than Renner or Collins or Fishback or Bobby Williams. So if I had my way, I would like to see us return to runoff primary elections, because those runoff elections have traditionally, going back to the 1980s, it was the second finisher in those primary elections that wound up winning the runoff. And that's, by the way, that's one of the reasons Bob Graham was elected governor. Is because there was a runoff election, and he was the second leader in the primary, in the first primary, but he wound up besting his opponent in the general election. So that's one of the problems we have with the structure of primary elections in Florida.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's a great objective of the Florida League of Republican Voters, because I'm a fan of actually rewriting the statutes that control the political parties in the state of Florida. And of course, that, the primary process is what you're referring to right now, which would fall under the election law. I'm not sure exactly what statute it is. I think maybe 103 or something. But I'm a fan of just drilling down and just reading those statutes over and just wordsmithing them out and drafting up resolutions that are ready for bill drafting in the legislature, and then carry those things around the state legislature until we can find sponsors for those bills. What do you think, Robin?
Ideally, yes. Unfortunately, it's increasingly difficult to find sponsors for legislation that doesn't have the approval of House leadership. And so a lot of members of the House and Senate are going to be reluctant to introduce legislation that might go against the grain. But that's one of the things we would like to see as far as how political parties are not, if not regulated, but the authorizing legislation is we would like to see the legislation amended to require political parties to actually follow their rules and to so that they're not able to waive their rules or ignore their rules.
Are you prepared to make a couple of comments, possibly, Robin, on the new leadership going into 2027, the new president of the Senate and the new Speaker of the House?
No, not at this time. Sam Garrison is one of our local legislators. He's in the next county south, Clay County. He's got a pretty good reputation, but you never know what direction they're going to go in. Another one of the problems that I think we have in the legislature, especially in the Florida House of Representatives, is that the speaker is chosen by the class in which that speaker was elected. So that speaker is not chosen by the total number of the members of the Republican caucus or the Republicans in the House of Representatives, but by that person's class. And so you lock that in with very little possibility of changing that going forward. I would much rather see them have an open election for speaker that doesn't involve simply focusing on or turning that over to those in the speaker's class when that person was elected.
And then, Robin, if you recall, you and our mutual friend, I'm going to extend, Bob White, who was the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida for a decade, were having lunch one day, in which Bob really educated me personally. I don't know if you knew this or not, but obviously the current Speaker of the House whips the votes in the freshman class and has a lot to say about who the freshman class selects as the Speaker of the House for their class. Do you remember that conversation?
I do, and that's problematic. And one of the problems too, one of the reasons, if you're on the wrong side of the leadership vote, you're not going to get important committee assignments. You're going to be relegated to kind of backbench status. And that's one of the reasons why legislators are reluctant to introduce legislation that would produce genuine reform at all levels. They're just not going to do it because they're not going to buck leadership. Now, if leadership is on board, then you've got a chance. But if they're not on board, then you're not going to gain much ground when it comes to trying to implement important reforms.
We are up against it. We have just a few more minutes. I thought possibly we could at least point to some action items that you have. You have a chapter or caucus tab here. And do you want to give us a little bit of an idea of what that entails?
Yeah, according to our bylaws, if you want to create a chapter, you would need to create a corporation, and you would need to incorporate, and you would need at least 20 paid members in order to form a chapter. If you wanted to simplify the process and simply create a caucus organization, which would still have endorsement authority in local races, all you need are 15 paid members. And then you can organize as an autonomous caucus within your county, following basic caucus guidelines, which we've developed, which are pretty simple to follow. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Some organizations require you can only demand that you only create a chapter, and you have to go through the process of forming corporations. Sometimes that makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. So we try to we want to give our members that option.
And also, you can simply become a member, and you have this, I guess, $15 per year is your fee to
Right. We've
become a
tried to make it
member.
as affordable as possible. We are a nonprofit Florida corporation. And if anybody goes to the website, you can see what we're all about. It's pretty transparent. And we're very serious about this. We're tired of business as usual. It doesn't work. And what we're seeing right now, and you've alluded to this previously, as a backlash is developing within the grassroots against this top-down authoritarian approach that the Republican Party of Florida has to its voters, the voters that it's supposed to serve, but it doesn't. It's basically a captive of a lobbyist and special interests.
So go ahead and give us, because we're out of time, give us, Robin, maybe a 30-second synopsis of what you'd like us to take away.
We'd like you to become a member of the Florida League of Republican Voters. All you have to do is go to florv.org and become a member and help us to grow our organization, because we have an important task ahead of us, and we're very serious about it.
And Mike, how about you?
Well, I'm just going to offer my services. The secret to getting people to join the Florida League of Republican Voters is walking them, holding their hand, and walking them through the process. So instead of, while it's great, it's easy to sign up. Look, Robin, my closing comment is this, that Robin has done an amazing job. And, of all the people that I've really participated with in politics, Robin is the most direct, the most effective, in my opinion, person who not only gets the foundational aspects of the organization right, but he also gets the strategic and tactical parts right too. And I can assure any of our audience that affiliation with the Florida League of Republican Voters is going to be an experience that is a more rewarding experience than just being somebody who just, stands on the street corner and beats a drum with other organizations. So that's the reason that I really am drawn to the Florida League of Republican Voters, and I'm offering my personal direct services to assist you in answering any questions that you have about the organization and walking you through the onboarding process. There you go, Chuck.
Well, thank you, Mike Levine. Thank you, Robin Lumb. And thank you all for joining us on Restoring Our American Republic. Please follow us on Facebook and X at Restore Our Rep 76. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.